Kaixo, arratsaldeon, hasi egingo dugu All Dirt Roads.
Good afternoon. We're going to commence the press conference of the film All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt, which, as you know, is a film, a US film, which is internationally being premiered in the official section of the Film Festival of San Sebastian after having been premiered in Sundance. Apart from competing for the Golden Shell, it is RTV Another Look and the Euskadi Basque Country 2330 edition. It's the opera prima of Raven Jackson. We know her very well, San Sebastian, because in 2018 she participated in Nest in the international encounter of cinema students with her short Nettles, and the following year in 2019 she was a resident with a project of the film which is she presenting today in the Kuzmida Bidiak residence, which is organized by the San Sebastian Film Festival, Tabacalera, the International Center of Contemporary Culture, and Elias Querejeta. And we're very pleased to have everyone who's involved in it. Well, most of the people involved in the film we have with us. Raven Jackson, director, MARÍA ALTAMIRANO, producer, and ADELE ROMANSKI, producer. So therefore, I'm going to ask a first question. I'm going to ask the journalists to raise their hand so that I can give you your turns to ask question. The first question that I would like to ask is, in reality, for the three of you, Raven, ADELE, and MARÍA. We know that, Raven, you've been working on this project since 2019, at least 2019, and I'd like to know, how was it to be able to set up this film and to turn this idea into this first feature film? And ADELE and MARÍA, how did you get to meet Raven and you started to work together in this project?
Thank you, Mayellen, for that intro. It was, I started working on this film in 2018, and it didn't start on the page. It started with me taking photographs, looking through some photo albums, being in the South. Like, it was really, there were a lot of seeds planted to get to this film, and so it's been a beautiful organic process over the course of the years it's taken for it to arrive at the festival. At this date, of course, equals Mira Beriak being a part of that journey, but it really did start in large part with writing certain scenes, certain moments, and not necessarily knowing at that point how it would connect. But knowing that it would, and I wrote more than ultimately in the script, but I needed to write what I wrote to land on the film.
So Raven and I met in film school, actually. We were classmates in the MFA program at New York University's film department. And during that time, we became friends, but also started working together. And I produced her short film, Nettles, which played the festival in 2018. And that kind of really set the foundation for our collaboration. And from then, when she was ready to start the process of making her debut feature, I immediately jumped on because we could, sense that we wanted to work together. So this was soon after being here, actually, with Nettles is when that process started in 2018. So that's how we first met, and ever since then, we started developing the project and then expanded the team to include our wonderful partners at Pastel, which I'll let ADELE speak to that.
I had the pleasure of meeting Raven through reading the script for the first time, which was a very beautiful way to be introduced to the world and to these two incredible collaborators. But one of the other producers, Barry Jenkins, had actually known Raven and supported her through a fellowship. Remind me, was it Memphis?
Indie Memphis.
Yeah. So it feels very organic the way the project came back around to us in script form, but Barry and Raven have a relationship that predates my reading of the script.
Cuando tengáis una pregunta, por favor, levantad la mano y así.
Please raise your hand if you're going to ask a question. Yes, in the front row.
Hola.
Hi, thank you very much for coming along. And I'd like you to talk about what's your idea of the editing Why that lack of order, shall we say, the film is very organic, yes, and I thought I understood exactly what was happening at each moment, but it is true that it's very intimate, very emotional, which you can see that goes much deeper within you as a director, and that editing has another justification, those hands, those hugs, that time that you give each of those gestures. Can you explain where you've got it? Where does it come from, that inside of you as a director?
Yes, I always knew this would, thank you for that question, first off. And I always knew this would be a film that sat inside of moments. I am interested in regards to the edit and the way, and in the heart of the film, the way things change form, how that's mirrored in nature, how that's mirrored in our lives, our relationships. And the hands for me rhyme with that. The order, the scenes, how for me it's not all of the, I knew I wanted it to be a very fluid film. All of these scenes for me are happening now, I wasn't interested in shooting something to look like it looks in the past or something in the future. It's all present. And so for me, the edit needed to have a fluid quality that mirrored water, and how the edit changes form mirrors, again, the water cycle, the seasons, nature, us as people. And also sitting inside the moments, even I knew that it would do that, the film would do that, but there are scenes like the grocery store scene, the hug scene with the hug, that's being present on set. You know what I mean? You can't script how long it's going to be. You just have to listen to what it's asking for, both on set and in the edit. And that was, for me, those characters don't see each other after a good amount of time and only hug for 15 seconds,
Raven, es una película...
Raven, it's a very sensorial, the film, from my point of view. Excellent work in the soundtrack, for example, which reflects the animal and the nature background, which surrounds Mac, and the photography, which shows with very saturated colors in the photography. I'd like to know how you work with the elements of sound and the photography from the point of view of how you staged everything for the shoot of the film.
Yeah. Again, it was a very, with Jomo Frey, who's an amazing cinematographer on the film, and who shot Nettles, which was a short film MARÍA, Jomo, and I did together before this feature. We would shot list, but when we were on set, it was always, again, being present to, is this emotionally getting at? Like I know what I'm looking for, but I'm open to the ways we get there. If I see something, like I love a pivot if needed. And so it was, like for instance, in the dance scene, it was at some moments telling Jomo, I want you to follow what inspires you, and I'll tell you if I want you to move somewhere else. It was being open to the flow of things too, and allowing it to be a little more loose rather than being rigid, And sometimes it was starting rigid and then opening up. But it was always knowing what I'm looking for, but first and foremost being present. And I think with Jomo and I, it's within that collaboration, we're really good at being present and being loose. And with the sound design, Miguel Calvo is the sound designer. And I knew this was gonna be a quiet film as far as it doesn't have a lot of dialogue. For me, the sound design is the score in a lot of ways. It only has, a few moments where there's a soundtrack in the film. And so being very intentional with, when there's a loud moment, like a loud hit of thunder, or the rain, like what is the sound of the rain, like really being intentional with the sounds we hear. because not only just to really have that sensorial evocative quality, but also to hopefully create a sense of interiority for the characters.
Hola, es una pregunta.
Hi, a question for the director.
Bueno, tengo un poco la sensación
I've
de
got the
que los
feeling
últimos
a little
años,
bit that in the last few
hay una
years that
generación
there's
de
a generation
cineastas,
of
más o menos de tu
directors, more or less
generación,
from your
mujeres
generation,
que están
women
reivindicando
directors
mucho
who
de
are
volver a poner
claiming
el cuerpo, el
putting
cuerpo humano, o sea,
the
el
human
físico
body,
en
the
primer plano.
physique in
Y en tu
a
película es
in
muy
a close-up.
llamativo
In your
porque es
film, it's
tan
quite
importante,
stunning
porque
because the
mucho
body,
en
you detain
pues,
yourself,
en
you
los
take time
rostros, en las
not only in
manos, en la
faces but in the
mirada,
hands,
en la
as my colleague has just mentioned beforehand. And this is something that you give a lot of importance to, as well as physical contact, that the characters touch each other very much. And over the years, you tell it through that contract what happens. But years back, for example, we missed that in cinema, the presence of a body and physical contact, which is something that directors like Trans Malik, for example, have always waited in favor of using. It wasn't very common to see it. And I'd like to ask you whether you share this idea or not that I'm telling you. And with this, it was essential from you from the moment you wrote the script. That is to say that you would see all of this, the contact, and you catch what I'm saying? I hope you got the question clear there. Thank you. It's a bit convoluted. Sorry.
Yes, for me, this film in a lot of ways is about connection, you know, and so to get at that, the contact, the hugs, the hands, gets at that, and also generations, you know, if you see the young Mac's hands with her grandmother's hands and her sister's hands, like the different generations, the family, community, like in the scene where they're washing the baby, you know, I love details. I love saying things without saying things explicitly. And so a lot of the moments you speak of for me speak to the connection that I'm looking for. And also I have, just in a broader sense, I have a deep interest in the body. I keep returning to it. I did a short, Nettles explores stinging moments in the lives of different girls and women, and it's chaptered with different body parts. And so I just, as a person, as a filmmaker, am interested in that, and that was carried on into my work in this film.
First of all, thank you very much for the film. I had a couple of questions I have. First of all, I'd like to know, what was the most difficult thing to do in the production process, which is a more general question, because it's taken 5 years in coming to be shown, to make the film. And for the director, I'd like to know if there's anything of you within all of this story, of that moment, of memories of yours. It's got a feeling that it could be very it may have something to do with you or your background as a person, or something you've lived.
Do you want to take the first?
Yes. So in terms of the production, or I guess the process in getting the movie made, one of the challenges, but something we embraced quite a bit, was that we knew we were doing something non-traditional in many ways. You know, the storytelling structure, we wanted to shoot on 35mm film. We had a lot of creative, part of the creative vision was very distinct. And so with that comes time to find the right partnerships, but staying committed to that. So for both of us, it was very important as we expanded the team, as we found financiers, to make sure that we were protecting the integrity of you know, something that was different and bold, that sometimes scares some people away. So we were lucky to do that. And then the actual physical production, we shot entirely on location in the American South, deep in Mississippi. And we were so fortunate that people opened up their homes, they welcomed us, because that helped us find all the little pieces that we wanted, the details that mattered to us about the sense of place, the community. But it's simply challenging to shoot there in the middle of the summer. It was peak COVID for the American South as well. So I think, you know, the way that we built the team, all of us together, was in making sure that, you know, we created a bit of a family that could go through some of those tough environments together. And so much of that, you can feel it in the film, you know, kind of that love that came from setting our roots there in Mississippi. Any other challenges?
I mean, no, perfectly stated.
And yes, I would say the film is fiction, but there are details where I or someone I love is in the detail. For instance, the title of the film comes from a conversation I had with my grandmother around the practice of eating clay dirt. I wrote a poem that has nothing to do with the film, but I wrote a poem with that title. There are in certain scenes, there are photographs of members of my family from like family photo albums on the walls. Like one of the characters is named after one of my grandmothers who's passed. So it's certain details that I knew I wanted to feel very close to this film. I mean, I'm making it, so I'm going to feel close to it anyway, but on a deeper level. And so there are certain details that would naturally be in it anyway, but like naming a character, the name of one of my grandmothers, it was very intentional to like always feel very close to it. You know what I mean? Even though it's a fiction film, there's, details that I hold very close.
About this, I would also like to ask you whether you've got sisters, because for me, this film, apart from being that generational journey, I think it's a love story between sisters, which I think is beautiful.
Yes. I certainly pulled from my familiar relationships, my relationship with my sister Shaquita, and it's a bond that I hold dear and that I see mirrored in a lot of ways, and that closeness with the characters in the film and how they hold each other, how they're there for each other, and they have each other's backs, and so yes.
La película recoge
The film takes on episodes of Mac's life, who's an Afro-American woman who was born in the 60s at the banks of the Mississippi River. And I'd like to talk about the genre and the ethnic side of things that are very important, what you're in the story, and also the producers supporting stories and films that have Afro-American women as protagonists.
Yes, I was really interested in creating a story that honored, people who I know and love, and was about life, but was very specific and was very intentionally specific, and it was important for me too to. I was very interested in doing a film with Black women characters where it was so quiet, you know what I mean, and where it was so. It did give room, hopefully, for or invite people into the interiority of these characters, and so it excited me to. Stay with these characters for the length of time that, in these moments that we do.
You want to go first?
Thank you for the question. I think Raven, wrote a story that was coming from such a genuine, deep place, and I think that comes first and foremost. And as producers, of course, I do value, and I'm attracted to work that puts people in the forefront who usually are underrepresented in general. But I think beyond that, as producers, our job is to just give Raven a space to tell the story the way she wanted to tell it, and as such, celebrate Black women in the process. And that was an important part, I think, just in general, as we, again, thought about our partnerships and how we would protect that creative vision. I think that's, that celebration is coming from such a deep, as Raven has shared, such a deep place that everything kind of just falls into place when you are doing it from a place of truth, which often is not given that space for Black women.
I'll just add to that, I think as a company, so Pastel, which is my company, we want to work with filmmakers on projects that move us deeply. And this is a project that moves us so incredibly deeply, both as a script and a finished work. And that's really at the forefront of all our decision making in terms of who we're collaborating with and what kind of films we're putting our energy towards as producers. My company is myself, a white woman, Barry Jenkins, a Black man, and our third partner, Mark Sariak, who's a white man. And I think maybe we are more often moved by stories that we find ourselves in. So I think the fact that we have diversity in our, the partners of our company does help in terms of the project selection, but we just have to be moved. That's really our guiding principle, I would say.
I actually wanted to know if you are able to say how this film is gonna transcend for you, because it's a film about different generations. So perhaps like in 10 years or when you are keep doing films, I hope, how do you think it's going to have that impact? How it's going to affect your career, perhaps?
I love that question. I think this process was a gift, that just a different level of being a gift, like as the process continued. And I think this, so when thinking about how making this film will likely affect my future work, it makes me think of just, I've expanded the ceiling on what I feel is possible, to make, to find brilliant collaborators to be able to watch and be proud of it, you know what I mean? To just go through the hard days, the beautiful days, the growing pains, and to trust, you know what I mean? And also trust your collaborators, trust yourself. And so I think, or I know, this process in this film it's opening doors for me because it's expanding what I feel is possible. I'm just really grateful.
Hola a todas.
Hi to all of you. Congratulations for your film. A question for Raven. In the film, I think it's something that's central or key and very important, which I think, it seems to me, and is the genealogical tree, the generations, and the intimate inheritance of what people receive, and above all, maternity as well. But I'm not too sure whether you situate yourself in any genealogical tree at a cinematography level in your country or other countries. What do you feel you are an heir of from a movie standpoint?
From a newbie standpoint?
Yes, from a cinematographic standpoint. What do you feel you've inherited from a cinematographic point of view? Because he's talking about a family tree, generations. And where do you feel you are an heir of from a movie standpoint? Where do you think all of that comes from for you as a director and what you do?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think I inherit filmmakers who celebrate nature, who I think that comes up really big for me when sitting with your question, because and celebrate small moments too. And I feel like those filmmakers who do that gave me permission to explore that in my own work, you know, and to know that, I mean, again, this is a quiet film. I mean, there are big moments that happen for sure, but there are also very intimate, more subtle moments that happen, and to know that my interest in exploring that territory I can do that in a feature-length film, you know, I think. And so when thinking of your question, that's what comes to mind for me.
Tendríamos tiempo para una pregunta más. No sé
We have time for one more question. Yes, seems to be one.
Sí,
Yes.
Bueno, quería preguntar.
I'd like to ask Raven whether you believe to a certain extent, and the producers as well, by the way, that this film is possible thanks to the current moment where there are more voices of women directors. A woman won the third Palma de Oro, the Golden Palm, which was the scene is completely different to what it was many years ago. This project, for example, which is experimental or more poetic or more difficult commercially to address, many years ago, perhaps would not have been possible. Do you think it's due to your film being made is due to the current situation and more women directors being able to do their work?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do agree. I think times are changing for the better. I think there's still quite a big gap to go, but it's hard to kind of pinpoint, what exactly led to this film happening in this very moment and, qualify it to one thing, or the fact that it is part of a moment. I think it's deeper than that personally. I think it's just, as Adele was saying earlier, it's a film that moved us, a script that moved us, and as you develop it, you just start finding those people that are emotionally connecting to it, and then that translates to an audience as well. But if anything, I'll just say I think we are, proud to be put in a category where people are celebrating and realizing that women directors can take risks and be bold in their work, and that at least I'm just excited about the possibility, as Raven was saying, of continuing to do that in our work. Yeah, I think that's where I would place it.
I would just add that I think if you give yourself over to the film and the experience of watching the film, it is, for me, an epic narrative experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
To close the press conference, I'd like to ask Raven and Maria what it means to come back to San Sebastian again and competing in the official section with your first feature film. We feel like you're at home. What's your experience to present a film, and once it's been finished, coming back to San Sebastian and premiered in the official section?
It's so beautiful to be back with the feature, and when the film was ending or about to end, I really was very emotionally moved to be in Cursal. When we had Ikusmer Beriak, they give you great industry passes. And so I watched a lot of films, and I remember being in Cursal a few years back as a resident, watching films, and to be now in the spotlight or to see my film on the screen with so many people, there are no words for how moving that is. And so it's been a really great experience to see how the film was able to come into bloom, through the festival, through Ikusimira Beriak, and I am so grateful for all the support that I received as a filmmaker, this film received, and it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, and I'll just echo a lot of what Raven is saying, but it has been quite a beautiful week already. And, from doing Nest to then Ikusimira Beriak to doing our pitch, I just have so many memories of being in this town and kind of dreaming big. So it's kind of quite beautiful to kind of be back and celebrate this moment. And also, I think kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, the importance of support for bold voices and new voices, and getting to see that all the way through is a prime example of why those types of programs need to continue.
Right.
And we're so grateful for the festival welcoming us with such open arms.
Right, and I just want to echo that, again, the support for bold voices that you all champion, that MARÍA jumped on board for, that Pastel champions, that this film at every stage has received such vital support from people who are looking for bold voices, who are looking for folks who are, trying to think outside of the box. And so I think when thinking of having, different voices rising to the surface, that support that is so key. So, yes.
Pues muchas gracias. Voy a pedir un aplauso para...
Thank you very much. Our applause for everyone involved in the film.